was the right time to stand up for freedom? Could it be when you start to feel creating children who'll inherit the pain and the debt of this nation and be slaves to the banks that cause hyperinflation, who are masters of commerce, lies, and bad legislation? Whoa, if you looked in the eyes of 1,000 young children through fences of razors, their innocence stolen as the red flag of tyranny flies in the open. Is that when you finally notice? Whoa, whoa, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange. For what can one man do alone?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Liberty Test, a podcast where moral intuitions are subjected to the real world. I'm joined by fellow libertarians. Tonight, we're going to be discussing government policies of putting fluoride in the drinking water. So here with me, we have Bob Schuon. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, Bob Schuon. I am the chair of the Suffolk County Libertarian Party and been around for about more than 10 years now. 12, 13 years. Wow.
Libertarian with some experience. Another one with some experience, Karyn.
Hi, I'm Karyn Thompson, Libertarian from Saratoga County. I've been here 8 years, seven years, I think.
See, that's the fluoride in the water affecting your memory. All right, Chris,
I'm on a
you want to
well.
introduce yourself?
Christopher Skelly,
have
Communications Director of the LPNY.
Rose?
And I'm Rose. I am the secretary of the Onondaga County Libertarian Party, member of the LPNY State Committee, and a member of the National Platform Committee. Been a small libertarian pretty much my entire life. Became a big libertarian at some point within the past 5 years. Decided to take the plunge and get involved in the party.
A baby libertarian. And last but not least, we have Blay Tarnoff, who I know went to get a cup of coffee. Blay, are you there?
I've been in the Libertarian Party since 1990. I'm a past chair. I was secretary of the New York Party for, 10, 11 years. And currently I'm the chair of the Nassau County County Committee. And I'm also on the Judicial Committee of the National Libertarian Party, where there seems to be a lot of controversy today.
Well, that's all right. We'll be talking about nothing controversial today, I'm sure.
Yeah, never.
Never.
Well, then I'll be hanging up.
Well, what we are going to be talking about tonight is the idea that government should be able to put a substance in our drinking water without necessarily getting the consent of every single person directly who's going to be drinking from that water. We're going to put that through our liberty test and decide whether the government should be permitted to do this ethically. We'll go through the government's justification for doing it anyway and what they say the benefits are. We'll talk about the libertarian alternative to that, and we'll wrap up with maybe some recommendations about ways that local libertarians can speak with their own water authorities if they have feelings on the subject too. So with that, let me throw it to Rose. I understand you did some research recently on the latest thinking when it comes to fluoride in the water and the government rationale for having it in there.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say I've done any recent research, but I know the basics. How the justification for water fluoridation is based on some studies that were done way back in the 1930s, where it was discovered that children that grew up in an area where there were higher levels of naturally occurring fluoride in the water were less prone to dental cavities. This was during a time when tooth decay was extremely common. possibly due to a high carb diet, though jury's still kind of out on that. Rationale being that, in short, fluoride helps strengthen tooth enamel. It does this by converting a compound known as hydroxyapatite to fluorapatite, which is a major component of tooth enamel. And
now, I was confused originally. I thought you had to get it on the surface of your teeth by drinking it, but I'm told that's wrong. Apparently, by drinking the fluoride and ingesting it into your body, somehow when you're, a fetus, you can turn that into stronger teeth?
As far as I know, there's not much rationale for prenatal exposure. This seems to affect mostly children while bones and teeth are still developing. So basically, it helps with tooth mineralization and remineralization. What was your question?
Do you have to drink the fluoride and get it on the surface of your teeth in order for it to be beneficial?
It needs to be.
In other words, what's the mechanism of action? I mean, feel free for anyone to jump in who knows the answer here.
It needs to be in contact with the teeth. So rationale was that if you're drinking water multiple times per day, it's going to be in contact with your teeth multiple times per day. But I mean, that's kind of, that idea is kind of outdated now, because nowadays we have fluoride containing toothpastes where you're putting it on your teeth and spitting it back out. So if there was any benefit to drinking it and having it temporarily in contact with your teeth back in the 1930s, we probably have better ways of accomplishing this now. It's probably no longer needed in the water supply.
Pop quiz time. Who here knows the original justification, or sorry, the original people pushing for the justification to add fluoride to the water?
That.
Karyn, go ahead and tell us about it.
Fluoride is an industrial waste byproduct of aluminum and iron ore. It cannot be dumped. So they wanted to repurpose it. And they hired a scientist named Gerald Cox in the 30s. And he knew about the naturally occurring fluoride studies with the children and the tooth decay. So he did sample studies. But some people allege that they were skewed. So he would take, these children who it was naturally occurring in their environment, and he would compare them to other children where it wasn't. But he's accused of cherry picking poverty-stricken communities, right? So people who maybe did not have access to proper dental care at all, and those were the other samples that he used. And he was like, well, just all their teeth are rotting, so we have to give them fluoride. And he was paid very handsomely. Yeah. When I started looking into it, I was like, where did the money go?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I want to know. And it went to Gerald Cox.
It actually goes deeper than that, too. Like back in the 1940s, there was an organization called Committee to Protect Our Children's Teeth, founded by a pediatrician named Dr. Benjamin Spock. He got most of his funding from Dr. Kellogg, who was a big proponent of a low-meat, high-carb diet. He was a proponent of this because he believed that meat caused what he referred to as carnal desires in people, and that that led them to be sinful, and that if you could reduce meat in people's diets, you would reduce sinful behavior.
Is this the same Dr. Kellogg that created the breakfast cereal craze?
Yes.
Yes.
And convinced people that they should be eating refined carbohydrates for breakfast as opposed to, say, bacon and eggs. He is behind a lot of modern dietary guidelines. So
they partnered with Seventh-day Adventists and created basically the original institutions of nutritional research in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
I was only somewhat surprised to find out he was also behind, in some way behind the water fluoridation, which makes a lot of sense. He was pushing a high carbohydrate diet, which may increase risk of dental disease. So if he can find, if there were a way to reduce the side effects of the high carbohydrate diet, it would be in his interests to, push for that.
Now, I've also heard that water fluoridation has been a controversial substance used to control populations. I haven't found any direct evidence supporting this. Does anybody have any information, or have you read anything touching on that?
I've read that both the Russians and the Nazis have done it to make people. The article I've read said stupid and docile. Obviously, they were pumping it in, I'm sure, at higher concentrations than what we're drinking, but it worked. You know, if it's true.
From what I recall, right, isn't it? Studies have been done to say that no level of fluoride is actually safe. Like there's no minimum exposure to fluoride. It's not like it's something you can ingest on a regular basis without some kind of consequences. That's from what my reading is.
There's a lot of go ahead.
If you read children's toothpaste, it will say right on the tube or the box, if they swallow more than a pea-size amount, contact poison control.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's pretty clear evidence.
But is that a byproduct of the fluoride itself, or a mixture of other chemicals?
It's the fact that this fluoride. Actually, I don't use a fluoride toothpaste. I use a different. They'd have the new ones now. It's the nano, whatever the newest compound is that doesn't contain any fluoride. And gee, there's no poison warning on the outside of the tube.
Well, you know, it's interesting how much noise there is around a subject like this. I mean, it makes you wonder if people are going to come down on the fluoride issue on different sides of it. What justification could the government use for putting it in the water supply, where you would have to know about it and care and make very conscious choices to avoid it, like installing a reverse osmosis water filter and using special toothpaste that probably costs 4 times as much?
I don't even know if you could stop fluoride that way.
I believe you'd need a Berkey filter or something like that. And by the way, that's a whole other subject. That company is under attack right now by regulators. Go figure.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
Libertarian context or in a current government context?
Well, in the current government context, the justification that I think they reach for is that there is a benefit when pregnant women ingest fluoride in levels that are considered low enough to be safe. But apparently when the fetus is developing, their teeth incorporate the fluoride into their substance, and that helps to prevent cavities, apparently. You know,
And
so
their
that's their
brains do
justification.
not.
I thought those studies were questionable.
Well, according to Dr. Brayman, they're really good science. So let's just strongman the argument and say that they're right, and that they're controlling the dosages very carefully to make sure that, you know, areas closer to the water treatment plant don't have higher concentrations than places further away, and that it's just across the board at a level that is generally considered safe. And let's even grant them that there are apparently benefits to the formation of healthy teeth to infants in utero. Is the government still justified in making this decision, and then all of us who don't want to be involved have to actively opt out, maybe at great expense and trouble?
Well, I would say it's at what cost? Because even if it does help with the formation of healthy teeth, like what would the other side effects be? Like, as far as we know, like we do know that a certain amount does build up in the body. We also know that it is a neurotoxin. It interferes with ion transport in neurons. Also, also has the ability to interfere with glucose transport and neurotransmission in general.
And thyroid function too, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, of course. Which thyroid function also affects brain function and IQ as well. And yeah, it acts as a competitive inhibitor for iodine on the thyroid. So, like, even if it's helping with teeth, like what at what cost is it? Is it, I guess, they're having healthy teeth that you don't lose prematurely? Is that worth, like, say, a 5 to 10 point IQ point reduction? Or
So, Rose, are you suggesting that if there weren't any consequences, or if the benefit outweighed the consequences, according to some objective measurement, the government should be permitted to
Well-
make a decision? We're not talking about a libertarian paradise here, but just under current
I think
government.
that's all going to depend because, well, I mean, I can get into the idea of the government medicating people without their consent. However, like the jury is still very much out on what constitutes a safe dose. Studies do suggest that at the amounts that it's in our water supply, it's probably not having a significant impact on on the nervous system function or thyroid function. But it is questionable, some of the studies that have been done.
Well, there was a study that came out of India recently, which is what prompted our conversation, where I think they showed that there was a measurable decrease in IQ. I think it was just a couple of points, and you could critique the study in other ways. So again, your point about there being costs and benefits is definitely well taken here. But if there were no consequences, let's say it was completely harmless.
Yeah, but I have to hold you up there for just a minute because here's the thing. What about the difference between somebody who drinks a pint or a pint and a half of water a day and somebody that drinks the official 128 ounces, which is what it's recommended for? Like, you see, then you're not getting the same dose. So you're you're multiplying that dose, which that's a problem right there. And like you said, it's very interesting because they're mixing it with the water, and hopefully they're mixing it in a proper manner. And but now you have the all of the other side effects of what if the machinery messes up, and all of a sudden a bunch of fluoride gets dumped into the water. That's problem number one. Number two, does the fluoride somehow settle out, get separated, not be delivered equally across the entire water system? And then to that fact is who's responsible? See, there's a question. Is that okay? Let's go theoretical. Say something goes wrong. Who's
Informed
responsible
consent.
for this?
Informed consent is a serious issue in medicine because people need to know what the risks and benefits of something are, and they need to be able to opt out. So,
Well, we're talking about libertarian.
That's part of the issue.
We're talking about libertarian theory now. I still wanted to see if, using the government's own philosophy, we could still assess. And based on the things you guys are saying, it sounds like even by their own justifications, even by their own ethics, fluoridation of the water supply done in the manner they do it is problematic. Chris, do you agree?
I would agree. I agree with Rose that informed consent is extremely important. I also think that there should be some kind of way, not sure if it's entirely possible or not, to differentiate these supplies between water supply filled with fluoride, water supply filled with not, if there was a way to properly push that out based on mitigating factors. But again, not entirely sure if that's possible.
It sounds like you're suggesting that would be a direction a libertarian-leaning government might want to go. Blay, I'm curious what you would think about using the government's own justification, though, and what Bob was saying about accountability. Does the government have a means of following its own ethical beliefs, where they believe in coercion, and yet still being able to have an appropriate amount of accountability?
No. And I'm going to pretend to be, very upset at this conversation that we've been having, because I think it reflects an inherent fallacy that people generally accept the notion that government laws and rules and regulations are really there to help people and to do the right thing and to implement all the fair, this, that, and the other. And I don't think any of that's true. I think people make laws for their own purposes. They have nothing to do. If they happen to do something good, I guess maybe you're lucky. But all of this rationale and justification, I think it's just feeding into the notion that government really is, wants and tries to do the right thing. I don't think they do. I don't think they care. I don't, you know. So,
But Blay,
you
what
know,
about
that's
the children?
outside libertarianism. That's like maybe libertarian, feeling, but it's not libertarianism. Just that government, it's making sausage, right? People are there, they're doing what's best for them, and it has nothing to do with health or safety or anything. Or rarely it does, I guess, but usually not. So that's the first thing. Second thing is with regard to libertarianism. I don't know why we're talking about this at all, because I don't know what this. It's none of their business, right? If there, maybe if there's some necessity argument or some defense of people, somebody's life is being defended, fine. But otherwise, maybe they're all angels and they're all trying to do their best and they're actually doing their best. It's none of their business. They got to stop. It has nothing to do with libertarians.
I'm so glad you said that, Blay, because the government's rationale when they're trying to hide whatever self-serving thing they're doing for their corporate contributors, their rationale boils down basically to, you have these infants, they're going to suffer a lifetime of rotten teeth because their parents are lousy parents, and the government really needs to step in and protect those children by giving them at least a foundation level of good health to start with, because we can't trust parents to raise their children healthily. Correct?
Well, there's a way to test this, and I use that word advisedly. Okay, first of all, would a private company set up and do this? Okay, on their own and be popular, and would an insurance company basically put up the money in case there's a problem? And this is where government is used, okay, to do things that people might object to, and basically claim liability for against whatever agency is doing it. And the government is basically that blanket shield to say, well, you can't sue us because we're the government. And, a private company would never get away with something like that because they'd be liable.
But Bob, you're acting like voting doesn't hold people accountable in the government.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works, isn't it?
It's true. Like, if I wanted to sell fluoridated water, like I could say, ooh, now including sodium fluoride, this will help strengthen your children's teeth. Like, okay, in case something went wrong, I might want to carry liability insurance. Now, an insurance company is going to say, okay, but we don't want to have to be giving 6 or 7 figure payouts in the event that this is harmful. So we're going to want to see some very well-designed studies showing that your product is safe. Of course, when it's the state that's doing something, liability kind of goes out the window because it is very, very difficult to hold the state accountable. There's also, you can also say like, okay, if it's a large corporation that is backed by the state and shielded by the state, you run into the same issue. I would argue that such a corporation is just part of the state, but it's kind of a whole other can of worms there.
Well, so are we saying that the libertarian solution would be for the government to do no more than, at best, arbitrate if a private company providing water, making health claims, was either misrepresenting their health claims or actively causing harm?
That would be the minarchist argument.
Of course, they do the exact opposite, as we all well know, since certain chemical companies, whom we will not name today, being the operative word, are literally legally protected and can't be sued, which is completely
people.
No one would ever insure someone selling fluoridated water just because it calcifies in your pineal gland, which even if it's a calcified tumor, medically it's still considered a tumor. So the research would immediately come back like, we found a bunch of brain tumors. And no one would insure that, ever.
So are you saying that a private system following libertarian principles might lead to better outcomes and more respect for people's individual health decisions?
It would kill the whole industry. Immediately.
Yep.
So in that case then, and one reason why we're talking about fluoridation today is because the government has changed hands, at least theoretically, and now we have people like RFK Jr. coming into positions of power and influence. What would be the right way, considering that they're not libertarians, for them to push us in a more libertarian direction? Would it, for example, be for RFK to ban water fluoridation, or would there be an alternative that would be more along the lines of what we would approve of?
I would say take it out of the water entirely and let people get it through toothpaste and mouthwash if they choose to. As most people probably do, use toothpaste and mouthwash a couple times a day.
No worries.
Right? They're getting plenty. Right? And then if you decide that it's scary for you and you don't want it, then you could get it without fluoride. Everyone's buying that regardless. It's out there already.
Yeah, if there's genuinely a demand for fluoridated water, somebody will probably step up to fill the demand. Again, it may not be as easy because of the liability insurance I previously mentioned, but there were genuinely money to be made there because demand was high enough. Somebody would probably step up to offer it. I'm not sure how much demand there actually would be, though, because again, like you said, now we have toothpaste and other dental products that kind of replace the need, or the original justification is pretty much a moot point at this point.
The
The
free
one thing
market will
government-
inevitably provide when there's a gap.
Chris, do you think so? Because one thing people love to use government for is to impose their will on society when private corporations won't provide the good or service that these people believe should be available at a particular price point. So what would you say to people who have really internalized the idea that water fluoridation is super important? And if people have the choice of opting out, or sorry, if by default they're opting out, and in order to opt in, you have to spend money, wouldn't people be upset about that? And wouldn't they say this is a market failure and a need for government to intervene?
Look, the easiest way to test the subject is make the water companies legally responsible. Because here's the deal. If someone gets hurt, they have the right to sue you. Okay? And to go after you financially and legally. If that's the case, then why does the government have to do anything about it, right? If the product is safe and there is no issue and people want it, then it will be provided. But if there's evidence against and there's people that are angry and feel that they've been harmed, then the judicial system should be taking care of that, right? I mean, it's the same kind of any kind of product that is not good for you, especially when it's being imposed on you. You should be able to have legal redress. But they don't, because government stands in the way to make sure that they can do this and you have no say. Unless, like I said, unless you live your life off bottled water. So, which is,
and even
much
then,
more
some
expensive.
bottled water
Right.
has fluoride in it.
Fluoride.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we've come to a pretty firm conclusion. We think people should be free to be able to opt in or out of this sort of thing. And we think that if the government's involved at all, it should be to maintain a fair and open relationship between consumers and the products that they voluntarily choose to consume. Does anybody have any finishing thoughts on this subject?
No?
I thought we were going to measure this against the platform tree.
Let's take a look at our platform. We can go on lpny.org.
It's bodily autonomy, 100%.
That's what I think.
No, I'd agree.
So yeah, I would say that in short, well, there's more research is probably needed on exactly how much exposure to fluoride is necessary in order to cause significant damage to major organ systems. You could probably make the argument that in light of the fact that we now have much better products that will prevent cavities, it is at best probably not helping anything, and at worst, it may be doing actual damage. So therefore, there's I don't see any benefit in people consuming it. And then there's the fact that it's also a violation of bodily autonomy when it's imposed on people without their consent.
Right.
Very much so. Well, I think we all agree, and then I will leave for another day the question of whether there are any medical interventions that the government should be allowed to coerce against everybody's will, or if there are any circumstances under which, in order to defend the health of some people, everyone needs to be subjected to a medical treatment. Hopefully, we won't have to have an urgent conversation about that anytime soon.
That's definitely another subject for another day.
Yeah, so we'll leave it there. Thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Liberty Test. We look forward to seeing you again.
And don't forget to mention that you can reach out at lpny.org. You can reach out to us. We also accept donations because we don't take big donations from corporate sponsors. We're out there doing this on a budget and a shoestring, and so talk to us.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Where will you be when the order is given to censor your mind as free speech is forbidden, as martyrs for peace from the world will be driven away by the sound of a bellowing thunder and choke on the blood of a dream going under? And from every direction we cry revolution, standing together.